I found the text messages on Sarah's laptop, and one of them said, "Don't worry, the stupid old woman will never figure it out until it's too late." My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped that computer right there on my kitchen table. After 12 years of raising that child, of being the only mother she ever really knew, those words hit me like a physical blow to the chest. The stupid old woman she was talking about was me, Carol Ann Shepherd, the grandmother who'd sacrificed everything to give her the life her own mother had thrown away. I'm here in my cozy apartment at Sunrise Gardens Independent Living in Lexington, Kentucky. I'm 69 years old now, and what I'm about to tell you will make you think twice about how much trust you put in family members, no matter how much you love them. Because sometimes the people you love the most are the ones planning to hurt you the deepest. Sarah came to live with me when she was just 6 years old, back in 2008. My daughter Jessica had always been wild, but when she dumped that precious little girl on my doorstep and disappeared to chase some man to California, I didn't hesitate. That baby needed a home, and I had plenty of love to give. For 12 years, I was Sarah's world. I was the one who packed her school lunches, the one who sat through every parent-teacher conference, the one who held her when she cried about not having a real mom like the other kids. I used my teacher's pension to pay for her dance classes, her school trips, her prom dress. I sold my late husband's coin collection to buy her a car for her 16th birthday. That girl was my heart walking around outside my body. Tell me in the comments if you're listening to this while having your morning coffee or maybe folding laundry. I want to know what's keeping your hands busy while I share this story. Hit that like button because each like is so important to help my voice reach other grandmothers who might be going through something similar. And subscribe to Grandma Legacy because no woman should ever have to face betrayal alone. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Right now, I'm sitting in my beautiful one-bedroom apartment with sunshine streaming through windows that overlook the most gorgeous courtyard you've ever seen. I have friends who truly care about me, activities that bring me joy and peace that I never thought possible after what happened. The woman who found those devastating text messages 5 years ago feels like someone from another lifetime. That October evening in 2020, when I accidentally discovered what Sarah and Jessica were planning, I thought my world was ending. I had no idea it was actually the beginning of the most empowering chapter of my life. See, for 12 years, I believed I was building a family. I thought love and sacrifice would be enough to create the bond that biology should have provided. I thought raising Sarah from a scared 6-year-old into a confident young woman would earn me at least basic respect, if not gratitude. I was wrong about so many things. But I was absolutely right about one thing. I was stronger than anyone gave me credit for, including myself. And when I found out that the two people I'd loved most in this world were conspiring to steal everything I'd worked for and throw me away like garbage, well, let's just say they severely underestimated this stupid old woman. Let me take you back to where this story really begins. Not in 2020 when I discovered their betrayal, but in 1975 when I married Thomas Shepherd in a little Methodist church right here in Lexington. I was 21 years old, fresh out of Eastern Kentucky University with a teaching degree, and Tom was this steady, reliable man who worked for the Postal Service and promised me a life filled with love and security. We tried for years to have children, going through heartbreak after heartbreak as month after month brought disappointment instead of the baby we so desperately wanted. Finally, in 1984, when I was 30 years old, we were blessed with Jessica. After 9 years of trying, she felt like a miracle, and maybe that's where we went wrong. Maybe we spoiled her because she was so precious to us. Tom and I both worked hard to give Jessica everything. I taught 3rd grade at Beaumont Elementary for 32 years, and Tom worked his way up to supervisor at the post office. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom house on Maple Street that Tom's father had left us, with a big backyard where Jessica played on the swing set Tom built with his own hands. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable, and more importantly, we were happy. Jessica was a beautiful child, but she was also headstrong in ways that worried me even when she was small. She had this way of charming people when she wanted something, But the moment she didn't get her way, she'd turn cold and manipulative. Other mothers would tell me how lucky I was to have such a spirited daughter, but I saw the selfishness underneath that spirit. In high school, Jessica started running with a fast crowd. She'd sneak out at night, lie about where she was going, and throw tantrums when we tried to set boundaries. Tom wanted to be stricter, but I kept thinking love would eventually win her over. I kept believing that if we just showed her enough patience and understanding, she'd come around. She graduated high school by the skin of her teeth in 2002, and instead of going to college like we'd planned and saved for, she announced she was moving to Louisville with some boy named Danny who was 10 years older and rode a motorcycle. Tom and I were heartbroken, but we couldn't stop her. She was 18 and determined to live her own life. For the next few years, Jessica drifted from one bad relationship to another, one dead-end job to the next. She'd call when she needed money, and like fools, Tom and I would send it, always hoping this time would be different. She'd promise to visit for holidays, then cancel at the last minute. She'd say she was getting her life together, then disappear for months without contact. In 2007, when Jessica was 23, she called to tell us she was pregnant. For the first time in years, she sounded excited about something positive. The father was someone named Marcus, who she swore was different from all the others. Tom and I were cautiously optimistic. Maybe becoming a mother would give Jessica the sense of purpose and responsibility she'd been missing. Sarah Elizabeth was born on March 15, 2008, and she was the most beautiful baby I'd ever seen. Jessica seemed to take to motherhood at first, calling us with updates about every little milestone, sending pictures constantly. Tom and I drove to Louisville every few weeks to help out and spend time with our granddaughter. But by the time Sarah was walking, cracks were starting to show. Jessica would complain about how tired she was, how much work a baby required, how she felt trapped. Marcus had left when Sarah was 4 months old, and Jessica was struggling as a single mother. She'd ask us to babysit for a weekend, then stretch it to a week. She'd promise to pick Sarah up on Sunday, then call Monday saying she needed just one more day. Tom had a heart attack in February 2008, just 1 month before Sarah was born. He recovered, but he was never quite the same, more tired, more fragile. The stress of worrying about Jessica and trying to help with Sarah took a toll on his health that I didn't fully recognize at the time. The end came suddenly on a rainy Tuesday morning in October 2008. Jessica showed up at our door with Sarah, 2 garbage bags of the child's belongings, and a story about needing to move to California for a great job opportunity that couldn't wait. "I can't take her with me right now, Mom," Jessica said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Just keep her for a few months until I get settled, and then I'll send for her." I looked down at 6-year-old Sarah, clutching a stuffed rabbit and looking up at me with those big green eyes that held too much confusion for such a little girl. Tom was at the kitchen table, still in his robe, looking older than his 54 years. "How long is a few months?" I asked. Jessica shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe by Christmas." That was October. Christmas came and went with nothing but a phone call. Then another Christmas. And another. Eventually, I stopped expecting her to come back, and I think Sarah did too. Those first few years raising Sarah were some of the hardest and most rewarding of my life. She was a traumatized little girl who'd been abandoned by her mother and was trying to figure out where she belonged in the world. Some nights, she'd wake up crying, asking when Mommy was coming back. Other nights, she'd crawl into bed with Tom and me, just needing to feel safe and loved. I threw myself into being the mother Sarah needed. I learned how to braid hair from YouTube videos, figured out the difference between a ballet flat and a tap shoe, and memorized the names of every Disney princess. I joined the PTA, volunteered for every school event, and made sure Sarah never felt different from the kids who had traditional families. Tom adored that little girl. He'd walk her to school every morning when the weather was nice, help her with math homework at the kitchen table, and read her bedtime stories in voices that made her giggle. Watching him become a father figure to Sarah brought me more joy than I'd felt since Jessica left. But Tom's health continued to decline. He had another mild heart attack in 2011 and then another in 2013. Each one left him a little weaker, a little more tired. The doctors said stress was a major factor, and I knew that worrying about Jessica and the responsibility of helping raise Sarah was wearing on him, even though he never complained. Tom passed away peacefully in his sleep on Valentine's Day 2015, when Sarah was 9 years old. She was devastated. He was the only father figure she'd ever known, and losing him felt like another abandonment in her young life. I was heartbroken too, but I had to be strong for her. I had to keep our little family together. Jessica came back for the funeral, looking thin and older than her 31 years. She cried appropriately, said all the right things about what a good man Tom had been, and made vague promises about being around more to help with Sarah. But 3 days after we buried Tom, she was gone again, leaving me with a grieving 9-year-old and a house full of memories. The next few years were challenging financially. Tom's Social Security stopped, of course, and while I had my teacher's pension, it wasn't quite enough to maintain our previous lifestyle while giving Sarah everything she needed. I started selling things, Tom's tools, some of my jewelry, pieces of furniture we didn't absolutely need. I never let Sarah know we were struggling. She was dealing with enough loss without worrying about money. Sarah grew into a beautiful, intelligent teenager, but she also developed some troubling traits that reminded me uncomfortably of her mother. She could be charming when she wanted something, but cold when she didn't get her way. She'd make promises she didn't keep, tell little lies about homework or where she'd been after school. When I'd confront her about these things, she'd either deny everything or turn on the tears and make me feel guilty for questioning her. I told myself it was normal teenage behavior, complicated by the abandonment issues she'd experienced. I made excuses for her the same way I'd made excuses for Jessica. I thought love and patience would eventually win out over whatever anger or resentment she was carrying. In 2019, when Sarah was 16, Jessica called out of the blue. It had been almost 2 years since we'd heard from her, and suddenly she was interested in Sarah's life again. She wanted to video chat with her daughter regularly, hear about school and friends and boys. I was cautiously hopeful. Maybe Jessica was finally ready to be a real mother. But something felt off about those conversations. They were always when I wasn't around, and Sarah would end them quickly if I came into the room. When I asked about them, Sarah would just say, "Oh, Mom's doing great. She misses me." But she wouldn't elaborate, and she'd change the subject. By Sarah's senior year of high school in 2020, these secret conversations with Jessica were happening almost daily. Sarah had become secretive about everything: her phone, her computer, her plans after graduation. When I'd ask about college applications or what she wanted to study, she'd get vague and say she was still figuring things out. The real warning signs started in the spring of 2020. Sarah began asking strange questions about the house. Was it paid off? How much was it worth? What would happen to it if something happened to me? She'd frame these questions as concern for my welfare, saying things like, "Grandma, I just want to make sure you're secure as you get older." Then she started suggesting I might want to simplify my life. Maybe the house was getting too big for me to maintain. Maybe I should consider moving somewhere smaller, more manageable. She'd show me brochures for senior communities that looked nice, but were clearly budget options, places where they warehoused elderly people who couldn't afford better care. "I just worry about you rattling around in this big house all alone," she'd say, using almost the exact same words Jessica had used years earlier when she was angling for something. In September 2020, Sarah turned 18, and suddenly she was an adult with opinions about everything. She started questioning my decisions. Why did I keep so much old junk around the house? Why didn't I have a more modern car? Why was I wasting money on things like my weekly hair appointment or lunch with my retired teacher friends? The final red flag came in early October when Sarah announced she wanted to take a gap year before college. She was going to stay home and help take care of me while she figured out her future. At the time, I thought it was sweet. I thought maybe all those years of love and sacrifice had finally paid off. and Sarah wanted to give back. I had no idea she was just positioning herself to steal everything I'd worked for and throw me away like yesterday's garbage. October 15th, 2020, started like any other Thursday. I was making Sarah's favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes, while she sat at the kitchen table with her laptop, supposedly working on online college applications. She'd been putting off those applications for weeks, always saying she needed just a little more time to decide what she wanted to study. Sarah had been acting strange for weeks. Secretive phone calls, whispering in her room late at night, sudden mood swings between overly sweet and coldly distant. When I'd ask what was wrong, she'd say she was just stressed about her future, and like the fool I was, I believed her. That morning, she got a phone call and stepped outside to take it, leaving her laptop open on the kitchen table. I wasn't trying to spy. I was just clearing her breakfast dishes when I saw a text message notification pop up on the screen. The name that appeared made my blood run cold. Mom Jessica. I should have looked away. I should have respected her privacy. But something in my gut told me this was important, and after 12 years of raising this child, I felt I had the right to know what was going on in her life. What I found when I clicked on those messages destroyed everything I thought I knew about the girl I'd loved and sacrificed for since she was 6 years old. The conversation thread went back months. Months of planning, scheming, and discussing me like I was some obstacle to be removed rather than a human being who'd given up everything for them. Jessica. Did you bring up the house situation yet? Sarah. Yeah, I've been dropping hints about her moving somewhere smaller. She's not biting, though. Jessica. We need to move faster. I found a lawyer here who specializes in this stuff. If we can get her declared incompetent, we can get guardianship and make the decisions for her. Sarah. How do we prove she's incompetent? She's still pretty sharp for an old lady. Jessica. Document everything. If she forgets anything, write it down. If she seems confused about dates or names, record it. We build a case. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through message after message of pure betrayal. They had discussed which nursing homes were cheapest, how much the house might sell for, even how to divide the proceeds. Sarah had sent Jessica photos of the inside of my house, appraising our furniture and belongings like she was conducting an estate sale. But the worst message, the one that felt like a knife through my heart, was Sarah's response to Jessica asking if she felt bad about their plan. Don't worry. The stupid old woman will never figure it out until it's too late. She's so desperate to be loved that she'll believe anything I tell her. Honestly, it's kind of pathetic how grateful she is for every little scrap of attention I give her. Jessica. Perfect. The lawyer says once we establish a pattern of confusion and get medical documentation, we can move pretty quickly. Those court-appointed evaluators are overworked and won't look too closely at a routine competency case. Sarah. Good. I'm so tired of pretending to care about her boring stories and her pathetic attempts to be my real mom. She's not my mom. She's just the free babysitter who's outlived her usefulness. I had to grab the kitchen counter to steady myself. The room was spinning, and I thought I might actually vomit right there on my own kitchen floor. This was Sarah. My Sarah. The little girl I'd rocked to sleep through nightmares. The teenager I'd cheered for at every school play and basketball game. This was the child I'd sold my husband's belongings to support, the young woman I'd planned to put through college, even if it meant eating ramen noodles for the rest of my life. There were more messages detailing their timeline. Jessica had found a cooperative doctor in California who would provide testimony about my declining mental state based on her observations during our rare phone calls. Sarah was documenting every time I repeated a story or forgot where I'd put my reading glasses. They had researched the legal process for involuntary commitment and had even picked out the facility where they planned to warehouse me, a state-funded nursing home with a reputation for neglect and abuse. The final message in the thread was from just 2 days earlier. Sarah. She's starting to ask questions about why I'm not applying to colleges. I think we need to move soon. Jessica. I'll be there next week. We can start the process then. Make sure you have everything documented. Sarah. Already done. I've got 3 weeks' worth of notes about her confusion and memory problems. The stupid old bat has no idea what's coming. If you're feeling the shock and betrayal with me right now, show your support. Hit that like button, comment if you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, and subscribe because no grandmother should have to face this kind of cruelty alone. I heard Sarah's footsteps on the front porch, returning from her phone call with the very woman who'd abandoned her 12 years earlier. In that moment, I had a choice to make. I could confront them both, scream and cry, and demand explanations that wouldn't change anything. I could pack my bags and leave before they could execute their plan, abandoning the home Tom and I had built together. Or I could do something smarter. I quickly took photos of every message with my phone, then closed the laptop and returned to the kitchen as if nothing had happened. When Sarah came back inside, I was washing dishes with my back to her, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Who was that on the phone, honey?" "Oh, just a friend from school," she said easily, the lie rolling off her tongue like she'd been practicing. "We're trying to coordinate our schedules for next semester." "That's nice, dear. I'm so glad you're staying in touch with your friends." She didn't know that I'd just discovered her plan to destroy me. She didn't know that I'd seen exactly what she thought of the woman who'd raised her with nothing but love and sacrifice. Most importantly, she didn't know that this stupid old woman was about to teach her and her mother a lesson they'd never forget. Game on. For the next 3 days, I lived a double life. During the day, I played the part of the unsuspecting grandmother, making Sarah's meals, asking about her plans, and pretending nothing had changed. But every night after she went to bed, I was working on my counter-strategy with the focus and determination of a general planning a military campaign. My first call was to Margaret Torres, an old teaching colleague who'd become a family law attorney after retiring from education. Margaret had helped me with Tom's estate planning, and she knew our family situation better than most. When I called her on Friday evening, she was shocked by what I'd discovered. "Carol, what they're planning is elder abuse," Margaret said bluntly. "It's a felony in Kentucky, and if they'd succeeded, they could have faced serious prison time." "I don't want to send my granddaughter to prison," I said, though part of me wasn't sure I meant it anymore. "I just want to protect myself and make sure they can't do this to anyone else." "Then we need to document everything and get ahead of this legally. Can you come to my office tomorrow morning without Sarah knowing?" Saturday morning, I told Sarah I was going grocery shopping, something I did every Saturday anyway. Instead, I drove to Margaret's office with printouts of every text message, photos I'd taken of Sarah's documentation notebook, which I'd found hidden in her dresser, and a detailed timeline of their planning. Margaret read through everything with growing anger. "Carol, they've been planning this for at least 6 months. This isn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. This is calculated financial exploitation with forged medical evidence. What can we do?" "First, we protect your assets immediately. We'll set up a revocable trust with you as the sole beneficiary during your lifetime, and we'll designate a neutral third party as successor trustee. Second, we arrange for an independent mental competency evaluation from a doctor they've never met. Third, we set a trap." The trap was brilliant in its simplicity. Margaret would draft documents making it appear that I was considering moving to a retirement community and needed help organizing my affairs. We'd let Sarah discover these documents and see how quickly she and Jessica moved to accelerate their timeline. On Monday morning, I left the fake documents on my kitchen counter where Sarah would easily find them. The papers suggested I was looking at selling the house and moving to a senior community in Florida, something that would panic them since it would put my assets out of their immediate reach. Sarah took the bait immediately. Within hours, Jessica called for the first time in months, suddenly very concerned about my big decisions and wanting to help me think through my options. She asked detailed questions about my timeline, my finances, and whether I'd talked to any lawyers yet. "Mom, you shouldn't make decisions like this when you're grieving and confused," Jessica said, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Why don't I come visit next week? We can look at your options together." "That would be wonderful, honey," I said, playing my part perfectly. I could really use some family support right now. Sarah, meanwhile, had become incredibly attentive. She volunteered to help me organize my important papers, offered to drive me to appointments, and suggested we should update my will and power of attorney documents to make sure everything was current. "Grandma, I've been thinking," she said Tuesday evening as we watched television together. "Maybe I should have legal power of attorney for you, just in case something happens. You know, so I can help take care of your affairs if you get sick or confused." The audacity was breathtaking. She was literally asking me to hand her the legal tools to steal from me. "That's very thoughtful of you, sweetheart," I said. "Let me think about it." Jessica arrived on Thursday, looking nervous and eager. She hugged me and said all the right things about being worried about my welfare and wanting to help with my transition to the next phase of my life. She brought a briefcase full of papers, power of attorney forms, guardianship documents, even brochures for the nursing home they'd selected for me. That evening, the three of us sat in my living room while Jessica laid out their helpful plan. I would sign over financial power of attorney to Sarah, who would manage the sale of my house and help me transition to a lovely facility in Florida where I could make new friends and not worry about maintaining a big house. "The best part," Jessica said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "is that Sarah and I will handle all the complicated legal and financial stuff, so you don't have to stress about it." I nodded thoughtfully, as if I was actually considering their generous offer to steal everything I owned and abandon me in a substandard nursing home. "This all sounds very sensible," I said finally. "But I think I should have my lawyer look over these documents first, don't you? Just to make sure everything is proper and legal." The look that passed between Jessica and Sarah was priceless, pure panic barely concealed behind forced smiles. "Oh, I don't think that's necessary, Mom," Jessica said quickly. "These are standard forms. We don't want to waste money on lawyers for something so simple." "Actually," I said, standing up with a calmness that surprised even me, "I think we should call my lawyer right now. I'm sure she'd love to meet you both and hear about your plan." That's when their masks finally slipped completely. The transformation in Jessica and Sarah was instant and chilling. Gone were the concerned family members worried about my welfare. In their place stood two cold, calculating women who'd been caught red-handed in their scheme. "Mom, you're not thinking clearly," Jessica said, her voice taking on a sharp edge I remembered from her teenage years. "You don't need a lawyer for simple family planning." "Actually, I think I do," I replied, pulling out my phone. "Margaret Torres has been our family attorney for years. I'm sure she'll want to review these power of attorney documents very carefully." Sarah jumped up from the couch. "Grandma, wait. Maybe we should talk about this more first." "Talk about what, honey? About how you and your mother have been planning to have me declared incompetent so you can steal my house and put me in a nursing home?" The silence in that room was deafening. Jessica went white as a sheet, and Sarah's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. I don't know what you're talking about," Sarah stammered, but her voice was shaking. I walked to the kitchen and returned with printed copies of every text message, every cruel comment, every detail of their months-long conspiracy. I spread them across the coffee table like playing cards, watching their faces as they realized how completely they'd been caught. "The stupid old woman will never figure it out until it's too late," I read aloud from one of Sarah's messages. "She's so desperate to be loved that she'll believe anything I tell her." Jessica found her voice first. "Carol, I can explain." "Explain what? Explain how you convinced my granddaughter to help you steal from the woman who raised her? Explain how you researched nursing homes the way people research restaurants? Or maybe explain how you found a doctor willing to lie about my mental capacity?" Sarah was crying now, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of panic. "Grandma, we weren't really going to—" "Yes, you were," I said firmly. "You absolutely were. And you know how I know? Because I've been documenting everything for the past week, just like you were documenting my supposed confusion. The difference is, my documentation is real." I pulled out another folder. This one containing photos Margaret had helped me take of Sarah's hidden notebook, recordings of their conversations I'd made with my phone, and a written timeline of their entire scheme. Margaret Torres is filing a report with Adult Protective Services tomorrow morning, I continued. She's also prepared to file criminal charges for attempted financial exploitation of an elderly person if I decide to pursue that route. Jessica's face had gone from white to red. You can't prove we would have actually gone through with it. Actually, I can. You brought power of attorney documents, guardianship papers, and nursing home contracts. You researched cooperative doctors and court procedures. You documented fake evidence of my mental decline. In Kentucky, conspiracy to commit elder abuse is a felony, whether you complete the plan or not. The next hour was a masterclass in watching people realize their con had failed spectacularly. Jessica tried anger, then denial, then bargaining. She claimed they were just exploring options for my care, that I was misunderstanding their intentions, that they were only trying to help. Sarah took a different approach. The same manipulation tactics that had worked on me for years. She sobbed about how sorry she was, how she'd been confused and influenced by her mother, how she really did love me and never meant to hurt me. If you loved me, I said quietly, you wouldn't have called me a stupid old woman. You wouldn't have laughed about my pathetic attempts to be your real mom. You wouldn't have planned to warehouse me in a facility known for neglect and abuse. I didn't mean those things, Sarah cried. I was just angry. No, honey, you meant every word. The only thing you're sorry about is getting caught. By the end of that evening, both of them had packed their bags. Jessica drove back to California, and Sarah moved in with a friend from high school. Before leaving, Sarah made one last attempt to manipulate me. Grandma, where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do? You're all the family I have. I looked at this young woman I'd raised from a traumatized 6-year-old into what I'd hoped would be a decent human being, and I felt nothing but sadness for what might have been. You have a choice, Sarah. You can learn from this and become a better person, or you can follow your mother's path and spend your life taking advantage of people who love you. But you can't do it here, and you can't do it to me. The next morning, I changed all my locks, updated my security system, and met with Margaret to finalize my asset protection plan. Within a week, I'd received a legal letter from Jessica's California attorney claiming I was mentally unstable and demanding a competency hearing. Margaret and I were ready for that too. 3 months after Jessica and Sarah left my house for the last time, I was sitting in Dr. Elizabeth Morrison's office. No relation to Blake Morrison, just one of those funny coincidences life throws at you, getting the results of my comprehensive mental competency evaluation. Dr. Morrison was a geriatric psychiatrist who specialized in cases involving financial exploitation of the elderly. Mrs. Shepherd, she said with a smile. I've been doing these evaluations for 20 years, and I can tell you with complete confidence that you are one of the most mentally acute 70-year-olds I've ever assessed. Anyone claiming you're incompetent is either lying or delusional. Her report became a key piece of evidence when Jessica's attorney tried to challenge my capacity in court. The judge took one look at Dr. Morrison's findings, reviewed the documented evidence of Jessica and Sarah's conspiracy, and not only dismissed their petition, but referred the case to the district attorney for potential criminal prosecution. I chose not to pursue criminal charges, not because I forgave them, but because I realized that the best revenge against people who saw me as a helpless victim was to live a life so full of joy and purpose that their betrayal became irrelevant. The first step was selling the house on Maple Street. It was too big for me, too full of memories, both good and painful, and frankly, I wanted to start fresh somewhere that Jessica and Sarah couldn't find me easily. The house sold quickly in early 2021, and I used the proceeds to buy a beautiful apartment at Sunrise Gardens Independent Living, right here in Lexington. Sunrise Gardens wasn't anything like the warehouse facility Jessica and Sarah had picked out for me. It was a vibrant community of active seniors who'd chosen to simplify their living arrangements while maintaining their independence. My neighbors included retired teachers, business owners, doctors, and artists, people with fascinating stories and sharp minds who became the family I'd always wanted. Within 6 months, I joined the community book club, the gardening committee, and the volunteer coordination team. That last one changed my life in ways I never expected. Our volunteer team worked with various local charities, and one of them was the Bluegrass Children's Advocacy Center, which provided services for children who'd been abused or abandoned. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was volunteering to help children who'd been betrayed by the adults who should have protected them, while dealing with my own betrayal by the child I'd protected and loved for 12 years. My first assignment was reading to children in the center's safe house, kids aged 6 to 16 who'd been removed from dangerous homes and were waiting for foster placement. The moment I walked into that bright, cheerful playroom and saw those resilient little faces, I knew I'd found my purpose. There was Marcus, age 7, who'd been abandoned by his mother and was learning to trust adults again. There was Emma, 12 years old, who'd been caring for her younger siblings since she was 8 and was slowly learning how to be a child. There was David, 15, who'd aged out of most foster programs but wasn't ready for complete independence. These children reminded me that not all family relationships end in betrayal. Sometimes love and sacrifice do create genuine bonds. Sometimes investing in someone's future pays dividends in gratitude and affection that last a lifetime. I started spending more and more time at the center, eventually becoming their most reliable volunteer. I helped with homework, taught basic life skills, and most importantly, I listened. These kids had been through trauma that made my story look like a minor family disagreement, yet they still had hope, still believed in the possibility of love and safety. 2 years after Jessica and Sarah's betrayal, I made a decision that would have shocked my former self. I applied to become a therapeutic foster parent for teenage girls who were considered difficult placements. At 71 years old, I was starting over as a mother figure for children who needed what I had to offer: stability, patience, and the hard-earned wisdom of someone who understood betrayal. My first placement was Aisha, a 14-year-old who'd been bounced between relatives and foster homes for 3 years. She was angry, defensive, and convinced that every adult would eventually abandon her, just like I'd been convinced that love and sacrifice would always be rewarded with loyalty. "Why do you want to help me?" Aisha asked during our first week together, her arms crossed and her expression guarded. "What do you get out of it?" "Honestly," I said, sitting across from her at my kitchen table, "I get the chance to do better this time. I get to love someone who might actually appreciate it, instead of someone who takes it for granted." Aisha lived with me for 8 months before being reunified with her grandmother in Ohio. But during those 8 months, I watched her transform from an angry, suspicious teenager into a confident young woman who believed in her own worth. She still sends me letters and photos, calls me on holidays, and refers to me as her Carol when she talks about me to friends. After Aisha came Maya, then Destiny, then Hannah. Each girl taught me something different about resilience, about healing, and about what real family looks like. None of them were perfect. They had behavioral issues, trust problems, academic struggles. But they also had something Sarah had lost somewhere along the way: the capacity for genuine gratitude and authentic affection. The financial side of my new life was secure too. Margaret had helped me restructure my assets so that they were protected from any future legal challenges, and the sale of the house had given me more financial freedom than I'd ever had. I could afford to be generous with my foster daughters, taking them on shopping trips and college visits without worrying about my own security. But the best part of my new life was the peace. I woke up every morning knowing that the people in my life chose to be there, not because they felt obligated or because they wanted something from me. My friends at Sunrise Gardens, my volunteer colleagues at the Advocacy Center, my foster daughters, they all valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. Last year, I got a Christmas card from Sarah. No return address, just a generic card with a message about missing our family and hoping to reconnect someday. I threw it away without a second thought, but not before showing it to Aisha during one of her visits. Some people, Aisha observed wisely, don't know the difference between love and convenience. They think love means someone will always be there to use, instead of someone you want to be there for. At 21, Aisha had figured out something it took me 71 years to learn. Sitting here in my sunny apartment this morning, watching Hannah practice her college interview skills at my kitchen table, I can barely recognize the woman who found those devastating text messages 5 years ago. The Carol who discovered that the granddaughter she'd raised for 12 years called her a stupid old woman feels like someone from another lifetime entirely. People ask me sometimes if I regret not giving Sarah a second chance, if I miss having a real family connection. The truth is, I learned the difference between real family and biological family the hard way. Real family doesn't plot to steal from you. Real family doesn't call you pathetic behind your back. And real family sure doesn't try to have you declared incompetent so they can warehouse you in a nursing home. The hardest lesson was accepting that love isn't always enough. For 12 years, I believed that if I just loved Sarah enough, sacrificed enough, gave enough, she would love me back the same way. I thought raising her from a traumatized 6-year-old would earn me loyalty, if not gratitude. I was wrong about that, but I was right about something more important. I was capable of love worth having, even if Sarah couldn't appreciate it. I learned that you can pour your whole heart into someone and still be treated like an inconvenience. I learned that some people see kindness as weakness and generosity as stupidity. But I also learned that there are people in this world who will treasure the same love that others take for granted. The girls I've fostered over the past 3 years have taught me what genuine appreciation looks like. When Aisha graduated high school and said I was the first adult who ever believed in her potential, when Maya called me from her first job interview to thank me for teaching her interview skills, when Destiny invited me to walk her down the aisle at her wedding last month, those moments showed me what it feels like to be valued, not used. Last month, I got a letter from an attorney in California. Jessica had passed away in a car accident, and apparently Sarah was trying to claim that as Jessica's heir, she had some legal right to contact me about family reconciliation and my moral obligation to help her with Jessica's debts. The audacity was breathtaking. Even death couldn't stop them from trying to manipulate me for money. I sent the letter to Margaret, who responded with a legal notice that any further contact would be considered harassment. Some people never learn that their actions have consequences, that burned bridges can't be rebuilt with more manipulation. If this story of betrayal and rebuilding touched your heart, like this video right now, tell me in the comments about a time when you had to choose yourself over people who didn't value you, and subscribe to Grandma True Stories, because every grandmother deserves to know her worth and demand better treatment. To any woman listening who's dealing with family members who see her as a resource instead of a person, listen to me carefully. You are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. You don't owe anyone access to your love, your money, or your life just because you share DNA with them. Trust your instincts, protect your assets, document everything, and never ever feel guilty for refusing to be victimized by people who should be protecting you instead of exploiting you. I'm 69 years old, and I wake up every morning in a home filled with respect and surrounded by people who choose to love me because of who I am, not what I can give them. I have Hannah, who's starting college in the fall and calls me Grandma Carol with genuine affection. I have my community of friends who value my wisdom and experience. I have my volunteer work that gives my life meaning and purpose. Sarah and Jessica thought they were getting rid of a burden when they showed their true colors. Instead, they freed me to find the family I deserved all along. And honey, this family is everything I ever wanted.